Let me try to
I,
share the
I was
other
getting
screen.
excited for a second there. I felt like I was just like watching the process be. Yeah. Okay. So this looks a little bit more appropriate now. I
Okay,
think I
it's
just
kind
screwed
of, it's
this
kind of
up.
you entered the matrix.
Yes.
Good job.
For a moment, I saw the truth, and now I'm back in the happy cocoon, warm cocoon of ignorance.
All right, well, this is the start of our stream. Hello, I'm Dom,
I am Jeff, and
and
this is Jeff and Dom make a game, right?
yeah, and for the last 2 weeks we made a game, uh, and we decided it was enough of a game and the best game ever, and the stream is done. Weirdly,
So
that
what do
was
we do
it.
now?
Uh, yeah, exactly. So I'm very excited to start working on our next project that we initially scoped as something Bolo like, um, and it was very fun uh, to find this in my email or in my Slack this morning from you, Jeff, was a copy of Bolo, uh,
Yes.
which I haven't seen this in years and years and years.
So
But it looks
what's your Bolo story? How did you encounter Bolo for the first time?
I think this like came on the Mac Plus I had or something, or a quad. Like my first color Macintosh had this sucker. Uh, I remember that this game was very cool and very confusing because I was 6 and I did not quite
Yeah.
understand everything that was going on.
I played Bolo. I want to say in 1995 or 96. I
Hmm.
went to a summer computer camp that was literally called Computer Camp, and it was my first time experiencing campus broadband and local area networks and such things. And we played Bolo. Maybe we should give people like an idea of what Bolo actually is.
Yeah,
How would you actually describe Bolo? I guess we could just show it off and play it.
and it's a kind of a building real time strategy game. It's not quite in a StarCraft. It's like if StarCraft and Warcraft were like one path for real time strategy. Like this is a very different one.
Yeah, and it's also arcadey too, right? There's a sort of like almost it almost precedes the whole massively online battle arena style game, which
Hmm.
I think starts with Warcraft 3 mods, and then you get League of Legends and Dota and those things, right?
Hmm.
Where actual dexterity matters in this game, which is, I guess, obliquely true for real time strategy, right? Like you get like how many actions per keystrokes per second if you're really really good at those.
Yeah,
But
there's a lot of that going on.
yeah, but this also is like slightly physicsy too. I was actually surprised, uh,
Hmm.
quite frankly, and this is probably the experience that a lot of people are going to have when they play retro games. Is like how poorly they control and like how much that sort of like player hostile mechanic was just part and parcel of playing old video games, right?
Hmm. Yeah. I feel I got hit by a bullet in this, and my tank got shot back, and I was like, oh, I guess we do need to build a physics model. Okay.
You know the way to do this, actually. I think you're in the tutorial. If
Yeah.
you restart the game and choose the second option, which is like single player open world or something like that, that'll allow you to kind of skip a lot of the annoying tutorial stuff that it does. The tutorial is actually shockingly well done. Like they had in mind a kind of idea that they didn't want a manual and they just wanted to throw you right into it. And
Well, I'll
therefore
tell
it's
you the
like,
problem. I
yeah,
don't know the controls.
yeah, okay. So
There we go. There we go.
yeah, so Q and A
Hmm. Forward and back.
is it's not forward and back. It's actually the gas pedal and the brake. And then I think O
Right.
and P is like steering.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
ooh, you had like a really terrible starting position,
Yeah.
where
I,
you
I,
have
I can see that.
these turrets that are shooting at you, which are pillboxes. They're called pillboxes. And so, okay, in Bolo, you're a tank. I did a slight amount of Wikipedia research, and the claim is that Bolo, the name, I think comes from this like sci-fi like novel series from the 60s about a series of self-aware tanks.
Huh.
Um, uh, I'm not sure how self-aware the tanks actually are in this Bolo because there's a mechanic where you actually can. I mean, there's lots of mechanics in this game, and this is why I think we thought it was going to be interesting to kind of like try to build something inspired by Bolo. But there's clearly a human driving this tank. There's also the ability to send your pilot out to do stuff in the world
That's
where the
right.
pilot is
Yeah.
very vulnerable, right? And that kind of implies that maybe this tank isn't so self-aware. At any rate, The lore doesn't matter. We're not playing this game for the exciting storyline, right?
Nope,
but what we do have is an overhead map, right?
Mhm.
And we've got a tank,
Nice.
and your
Can't
tank
even
can
make
shoot
this bigger. It's
things.
amazing.
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Oh, just that I can't even enlarge this for the screen. Like this is the size we get.
That's what we've got. I think there might be a way to tell Sheep Shaver to run at a higher resolution, but
I
guess
I
this
did
is the best
twice.
we've got.
Now we're doing 1024, but Bolo itself is still contained to this 640 window.
Yeah, the screenshots though look really good
Mhm,
because there's no like retina artifacting or anything like that.
So yeah,
So yeah, what else do you remember of this game?
um, I remember gonna put my own little pillboxes down. Um,
Yeah,
but I don't think I ever actually like beat it, and I never got the net play. I didn't have any nets or friends to play it on the net with to do this. So
yeah.
to
So
me,
the other
the
thing that
ability
you can
to
do here
that,
is if you
yeah,
press the space bar, you can actually shoot at the walls, and they take like 4 or 5 shots, and then once you destroy the walls, you've now got a hole in the wall that you can drive through, right?
boom.
And those little diamonds that are kind of squishy squares that you see there are bases.
Mhm.
And if you just sit there, you'll notice the little bars on the right pane kind of fill up. And
Yep.
these are restocking or refueling bases that I believe start off as neutral. And then when you drive over it, you claim it, and it kind of like capture the flag or king of the hill kind of way. And then as you sort of sit on them, they'll fill you up. And so the goal of this game is, I think, to capture all of the pillboxes. The pillboxes are little turrets that we saw killing Dom before.
You capture all the
I don't actually
pillboxes, not all
quite.
the bases.
It might be all the bases. It might be all the
Yeah.
pillboxes. There's lots of different modes of play. I imagine you can also probably just like kill all of the other tanks, or accumulate
Right.
the most number of kills in a certain time period or something like that. But I think the interesting thing about this game is that it kind of mixes this sort of like kind of Twitch reflex style play. Like you can see that like because of the slidey physics of the tank here, does the pillbox have more range than you? Is that what I was observing there?
It does, and it shoots very fast.
Yeah.
Maybe my bullets
So
might have been bouncing off of it actually, which is a very
Uh,
interesting.
I don't think they bounce. It's just that the pillboxes can kick your butt. And so there is a whole art and science
Oh,
to actually
wow.
capturing pillboxes where you need to kind of like.
They
There's going to be a
can
lot of
kick your
death.
butt.
We might not actually be able to play Bolo as modern gamers. Like it might not actually be physically possible to play this game. It's just too difficult. So the mechanics here again, like you have to like learn how to drive the tank. It's a little bit like driving a manual transmission car. It's not super player friendly. You can shoot things, certainly other tanks, but you can also shoot walls. You can shoot pillboxes. And once you capture the pillboxes, once you destroy one, what happens is you can pick up its remnants. I've sort of been thinking of them as like the cores, but I'm not actually sure what they call them in the game. But once you have them and you have enough resources, which you get by like essentially harvesting trees, you can see sort of like these light green squiggles on the map, and those represent forests. And once you gather enough of those, you can build pillboxes. And what happens is the pillbox goes from being red colored to green colored. And when it's green, it means that it's on your side, and that will shoot other tanks that approach you. Another cool thing you can do is use pillboxes offensively. So you could actually sort of like lay a pillbox down next to a hostile pillbox, and they'll just kind of shoot at each other. So there's a kind of mix between just being able to pilot a tank really well and shoot things in an arcade-style manner, and also this idea of kind of resource gathering and building, which I think is kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, and I don't know why, but this has always had kind of a Tron feel to me. It's got that kind of like tiny machines in the machine vibe that I think works nicely with the aesthetics we were thinking as well. But
I feel like the
also,
second act of Tron is a lot about them driving a tank as well, right? There's a whole kind of like,
and I love
tank in
the
a
idea
maze.
of like building the thing that other tanks, like fighting other tanks, building bases that other tanks are trying to storm.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an AI in this game. There's just the It has to be
It was
Nephilim, right?
actually AI. What's funny is they actually have this notion of brains. Like they
Hmm.
essentially had this plug-in system back in the '80s where you could write your own essentially script to tell to basically program behaviors for the enemy tanks, and that was like a big appeal. Um, I tend to think that this game was really popular on campuses. Um,
Hmm.
when you go to the website of the original creator, he was a gentleman named Stuart Cheshire. He has to be British, right? That like
Oh yeah,
there's no
that's
other country where that name would come from.
that's an exceptionally British name, and I love it.
Yeah. Oh, and so what are you doing here? Can you explain
Uh,
what you're doing right
yeah,
now?
so I've got my little menu of actions on the left, and I'm sending my tank operator out to collect.
Yeah.
I guess wood. I think wood might be my natural resource.
Yeah. And the
And I'm
UI here
just
is fascinating, right? It is very reminiscent of like the earlier Blizzard RTSs, right? Like if
mhm.
you played Warcraft or the original StarCraft, every unit that you would select would have this palette of actions, right,
Mhm.
in the lower left or lower right hand corner. It also is reminiscent of the old LucasArts adventure games where all the things that you could do, you could talk, you could pick things up, you can use items, and it was just like a bunch of words. It's like a
Oh
sort of action
yeah,
palette that was,
those were great. I have fond memories of those.
yeah. Oh, and I think you have killed that pillbox over there, right?
I better because I put a lot of work into pounding into that
Yeah.
sucker. So I think I can drive and get its core. Oh, it's not
Yeah, I think
dead.
you can.
Somehow it's
Yeah,
not
and
dead. Wow, all this work is about to be for naught. I read all my
yeah,
ammo just sank in the water, so I guess my tank's dead.
but we should try to capture that pillbox just so we can sort of demonstrate the pillbox mechanic, right?
Absolutely. I'm enjoying. There's a lot of little flourishes in this game,
Yeah,
like the way the explosion sort of tracks in the direction that you were hit by a bullet,
yeah,
um, or tracks away from that. Really, like you explode away from bullets, which I think is really cool.
right.
Um,
Um,
and also, I guess I'm going to get filled up on mines here in a second too, which I think I can lay mines for um, other tanks.
yeah, and I sort of sat down writing notes before the stream about like what the core game mechanics were in this game, and it's actually surprisingly deep and kind of elegantly minimal. Right? There's not a lot of overlap or fluff in this game, and I think we'll want to figure out like exactly what lessons we want to take from this, and figure out like how much of an homage versus how much of a new thing we'll want to take away. Um,
Hey,
but yeah, so I think you've claimed a pillbox.
I believe
And
I
does this
have.
show up in your inventory anywhere at all? I can't
What
really
happened
tell.
is that this circle turned to green.
Ah, okay.
And also bases I've been capturing have turned green circles here. So there's a total there's like a totality of bases and pillboxes represented on my screen.
Yeah. So basically, the state of the world is showing up in your UI here, right?
The
It's just kind of
entire
like right
thing,
here,
yeah.
and it is like 25% of the game, the game screen right here,
Mhm.
um, which is cool. Um, I believe there are 4 bars in the right-hand pane. Uh,
Mhm.
the leftmost one is your ammo,
Mhm.
right? Is that a little crosshair? Is that like a little crosshair? Is that what it's supposed to be?
I think it's little missiles,
Little
tiny little
missiles.
missiles.
And then mine's the second vertical bar. Your health,
Sure looks like mine. Then yeah, health or armor. When that hits zero, my tank is dead.
right? And so if you set a pillbox here to shoot
That's what
the
I'm
other
trying.
one, is that a possibility here?
That's what I'm trying to do before I die. Nope. I mean maybe, but
Is
oh
it
boy,
right click to
that's
yeah? Oh, this is
don't
another
get shot
cool
in the
thing about the
boat.
game is like if you get shot once while you're on a boat,
You're
uh,
just dead.
you just die. Yeah,
Good to know.
yeah. Oh, and you can collect the pillbox because the pillboxes are really the central thing in this game, right? It's
Mhm.
kind of like besides just like driving around and shooting things, the pillboxes are kind of the central mechanic where you want to collect them uh, and then use them. Oh, and you have to harvest wood because you don't have enough to lay the pillbox down.
I think that's what's happening. Yeah, I don't actually have
That's
resources for
brutal.
this, and it's oh no, that time he laid it down, so he had enough.
And is it going to
Right.
shoot the? Is it within range of the?
It certainly was certainly far enough to kill me a second ago. Oh, and the tank drives without the little guy. The guy leaves, comes back to the tank.
Okay. I was under the
the tank
impression
can
that
move
you
around.
can kill the little guy, and then either your tank is dead, or maybe you just don't have the little guy anymore. I'm
Yeah,
not sure with it.
sure doesn't look like this. My pillbox is doing anything without.
Oh, boo! Maybe the pillboxes can't attack each other. That
Maybe it
feels
needs
like
to
a
like.
that feels like a lost opportunity.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because that becomes like a.
It becomes
Uh,
like a little wall that you can hide behind.
yeah, there's sort of a tower defense aspect to that, right? Like,
Yeah, and you can build walls, right? That's the middle. That's the third icon
yeah,
down on.
correct. Oh God, no, sank. Fair. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. Yeah, as I recall, this game is very hard. I remember dying a lot and
Yeah,
continuing to find it endlessly fascinating. But the
yeah. The game
dying a lot is
helpfully
really
tells you how
resonated
many
with me.
times you've died, right? You have 6 little gravestones right
Yeah, this is really kind of a proto Dark Souls experience.
there. I think Dark Souls gives you the gigantic overlay that says you died, right? It's like 90%
Yep.
of the screen.
Oh yeah,
They
this
really
this is
rub it in.
just this just sends you into the static void for to become another robot tank.
At least there's not like a 90-second timeout for respawn. It's pretty
Yeah,
good about that, right?
that would be brutal.
Yeah.
But this is yeah. I wanna build a version of this that's single player fun. Multiplayer, I know we talked about, but I think it would be cool to try to build this as a game for one person. Um,
Yeah.
Especially because the strategic aspects are just so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe we can find like a peaceful spot to sort of like to break down some of the mechanics that are going on here. We've sort of demonstrated like harvesting wood and setting down pillboxes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but maybe
Uh,
we can find a place to just like talk a little bit about how the tank moves and what we like and don't like about it.
okay, great. I think I was miking a very loud noise to the stream for a second because OBS got mad. It's
Oh,
back. I discovered a letter I can't press while in that software, which is Q. Q does not make
oh,
OBS go forward; it makes OBS make beeps.
oh, nice.
So here's a peaceful spot. Sorry for that distraction.
Yeah, no problem. Um, so I think we mentioned a little bit before that like part of the charm and terribleness of old games is that they were almost like intentionally made to not play very well, right?
Right.
So I believe the tank can only shoot in the direction that it's facing, which is kind of not the point of tanks, right? I thought the point of tanks was to be able to like go in one direction and shoot in a different one, right? But I think you actually have to physically rotate the tank. So the way that you're driving is also the way that you're shooting, right?
Yep.
There's no driving backwards in this tank, right? I think if you hit, you have a gas pedal and you have a brake, but you have no
There's no
reverse
reverse,
gear.
which I was trying to hold A long enough to go backwards, which it turns out is not a
Yeah,
thing. Very
yeah,
frustrating.
yeah. And then the interesting thing about the motion in this game is the terrain affects your motion, right? So you're kind of driving through what I think is like a grassland, which is a little bit slower than the road,
Hmm.
but it's faster
Yeah.
than if you're driving through this kind of clear water here, which slows you
Hmm.
down.
So yeah, and it saps some of your inventory, and trees are also a slowdown
Yeah.
versus open grass.
And then I think there's also marsh, which is what you're driving through right now. And
I think so.
the
Oh no,
marshland
marsh is up
is
here. Marsh is very slow.
okay. Marsh is very slow. Okay, yes, and that slows you down almost as much as the water, but it doesn't hurt you, right?
Hmm.
Now it's too bad we don't have a way of demonstrating the multiplayer of this because I mean multiplayer really is the secret sauce of Bolo. In a way, I think you and I have been talking about this before, but like what we're talking about is almost like a I might be talking on my ass here, but it's kind of like a proto Minecraft or even Fortnite. Like, is there a building mechanic in Fortnite? I'm assuming
Yeah.
the Fortnite means you build forts. But so
Jeff,
you
you
have
ever you
like
ever
the
played Fortnite? Yeah,
FPS.
you build like walls and ceilings and roofs.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
it's actually very complicated and confusing, and I don't know how the children do it.
so maybe that'll be our like elevator pitch. It's like we're building Fortnite for old
Yeah,
people.
slow Fortnite.
Yeah, slow Fortnite with tanks. Another antiquated piece of war technology that probably doesn't super exist anymore, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I
Um,
think everything is a missile now, right? That's basically how we conduct our affairs, or a drone.
oh yeah, that would be a very boring variation of this. You just point and click missile simulator is not the Bolo I want to be.
Maybe our version can be the Boston Robotics, or what was that? That's sort of like those walking robot dogs.
Oh
Uh,
no, yeah, that is Boston Dynamics, and they're very
yes,
creepy. Oof.
yeah,
Google bought them, right? So now that is Google's robots.
the creepy Google drone dogs.
Yeah, yeah. Google didn't need those robots, but boy, do they have them
Yeah. So there's terrain, and terrain really matters in like the strategic aspect of this game, right?
now.
Because piloting the tank is a little bit wonky. Because attacking pillboxes, like you can't take a pillbox head on. A lot of it is about how you choose to approach a pillbox. Like, can you shoot a pillbox a couple times, then run and hide behind a wall, right? Like, if you watch people on YouTube playing this game, there's not a lot on YouTube, but there's some, and there's some people that are just really incredibly good at it, and they're skilled at like attacking a pillbox, and they can do it without dying, even though the pillbox has better range than you do.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, and even though like the rate of fire for the pillbox is much faster than yours, and it has more armor as well, right? Um, and then I think there's another thing in the multiplayer where if you're in the middle of one of those forest patches,
Mhm.
I think you're invisible to other players. That's something I read in the
Oh,
manual, which is a very interesting thing.
oh, interesting. So
Um,
this is cover.
yeah, it's cover. But I believe if you shoot, you destroy the trees. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can blow up a tree.
Oh yeah, so you can basically blow your own cover if you want.
Ah, that's so cool though. It's very Wrath of Khan where you just like pop out of a random star field.
Yeah, I think you can also mine. I'm not sure if your mines are visible on the open roads to your
Mm.
enemies. Um, it's too bad we don't have multiplayer. Multiplayer would be very, very difficult to set up. It could possibly be harder than actually creating the game. Is like setting up multiplayer for these emulators, right? And yes, you can basically roll over your own mines.
Yep, and they cascade. There's such a lovely little physics simulation here. Or like,
Yeah,
yeah, I like how consistent this world was, and I think that might have been what felt so good when I was playing it as a kid.
yeah. So maybe our goal is to basically create like a Turing complete mine mechanic. Is that the idea? Is like you can basically like like the 8-bit CPUs in Minecraft. We should rebuild that in Robot Dog Bolo.
What I find exciting about that is to model this virtual world as you if we place a tree, what interacts with the tree, and you know what does the tree interact with, and how does it affect the other primitives in the game, and
There is
there's a
a
lot of little stuff to build there.
Yeah, there is. But I don't know. Like, it's funny because you're mentioning this now, and what I was going to say about the secret sauce of Bolo. First and foremost, nostalgia, right? You and I are talking about a game that we both played when we were extremely young, and
Oh yeah.
it's very easy to kind of glamorize that. But I started talking about Stuart Cheshire, who's the guy who made this game, and you go to his website, and that website is like an object lesson in like link rot. Like if you click on any of the links that he has to the dozens and dozens of university fan sites for this game, none of them work whatsoever, and they're not even on archive.org. It's just like this lost piece of computing history. But this had like a really really intense following, and so like what I thought was the secret sauce of this was again this sort of like mix of getting good at piloting the tank, but also this kind of like multiplayer strategic aspect of it where you disappear into trees and you have to figure out how to kind of like lay siege to an enemy's base while other people are maybe gathering pillboxes and building up your own base and kind of like protecting the restocking bases and protecting those with pillboxes, but then maybe also figuring out how to use pillboxes offensively.
Hmm.
That was a thing that you could almost but not quite do in the StarCraft and Warcraft games. I don't know. Like when you played
Yeah.
StarCraft, did you ever like lay towers inside of people's bases or anything like that?
Absolutely. It was extremely rude, but always I love that strategy.
I
I
used to
mean,
play Terran in StarCraft,
oh yeah.
and uh, one thing I really loved doing was like building a bunker in the middle of someone's base, and then just like throwing like a couple of Marines in there and just like watching that kind of tear. like
Same
slowly
with
taking food.
Protoss. I love to get a little power center like near their base, just enough to get a cannon in their base,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
cannons at
totally.
the base of the cliff, and then you bring a vision unit over, and then you can shoot up at them, and they can't see you.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Um, when Warcraft 3 was still in beta, um, we used to play on what was then known as Open BattleNet. So basically, someone just like pirated. I don't know how they got this during the beta period, but they basically just pirated the Blizzard network software for Warcraft 3, and so you could basically play Warcraft 3 for free on this open server. And the game
Amazing.
hadn't been tuned very well yet. This is literally 2001, like or the year 2000. It was like a long time ago. So 20 years ago, and one of the tunings that didn't quite work was that the arrow towers were just too powerful. Like they would just like they had too much armor and they did too much damage. And so I would literally just play human and I would never build anything except farms, whatever I needed to gather resources, and towers. So I just had like 50 peasants consuming all of my food resources. And I would just build towers and just gradually grow this massive towers across the map. Right. And that was really fun. And so I will claim invention of the entire tower defense genre. I'm sure there was some aspiring game developer on BattleNet who went into a lobby and joined a game against my team and saw the wrath of my tower strategy. Yeah,
Oh, I
I
love
did
that.
that.
I mean, that is the game that spawned Tower Defense, right? Tower Defense was Custom War 3 maps, so like
Yes, very
I,
much.
they really, I think, somehow captured or gave maybe you created Tower Defense. That's what I'm getting
Yeah,
at. Instead of causing problems, you created a whole genre.
right. So I took us on a digression on top of a digression. We were kind of talking about like core mechanics. We've talked about like sort of the superficial stuff, driving around and shooting things, but like
Hmm.
the sort of ethos of this, I thought originally was sort of this interaction between, again, like, can I drive the tank or not? It's kind of hard to drive the tank, but I also need to like figure out this sort of like tactical nature of this, and also what kind of completes the triangle is like the sort of resource gathering and building aspect of it. So maybe that's a formula that is sort of familiar in RTSs, but maybe with less emphasis in an RTS on
Hmm.
kind of like Twitch reflex sort of things,
Yeah, I
or at
like
least you're.
I
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, I like that this is like instead of an RTS base building, it's like you are it's a single unit and you can drop some mild defensive structures, but it really comes down to player skill
Yeah,
and an ability to move as a character versus like I built the most towers, and I think making the game tower only would probably be what less interesting. It's tower
yeah,
defense then.
yeah, totally. But I think what you were getting at earlier, where like the mines kind of detonate each other, I think speaks
Hmm.
to maybe like a fourth element that I hadn't really thought about, which is almost this kind of like systems, like almost like proto systems implementation, where you can get what people refer to as emergent properties of games.
Hmm. Yep.
Emergent being like stuff that maybe the developer didn't super intend to have happen, but because there's enough variety and diversity of outcomes in a game mechanic or system, like all these kinds of crazy things can happen, and like we're very used to that nowadays, right, with the Minecrafts of the world, right?
Hmm.
But the game I'm actually thinking of right now is Breath of the Wild, right? That was the
Hmm.
game where um, a lot of these kind of like, oh, I'm gonna roll the boulder down the hill and it's gonna like run into the goblins and maybe knock something over, or I'm gonna light something on fire, which is gonna create a column of smoke that I can then like hang glide off of, right?
Oh my god, did you see what I just did? Sorry. I
No,
made I made I made a natural lake, and I think it was the perfect example of what you were talking about.
yes,
Or sorry, I made a man-made lake because I blew up some mines next to a river.
yes, oh yes, because that's actually one of the things that I kind of didn't even know about or forgot about, but I learned it reading the Bolo manual yesterday, which is that when you detonate a mine, it creates a crater, and if the crater is adjacent to a river,
Amazing.
uh,
It's so
yeah,
cool.
it'll basically fill with water, which is really really cool, right?
It blows my mind. I love it. Yeah.
So one of the things I would recommend to you to watch at some point is, oh my God, you're starting work tomorrow. Like you're starting a new job tomorrow, right?
I am indeed.
Congratulations. I was
Thank you.
like, Dom
Thank
has
you.
all this free time. He should just go on YouTube and watch all these random videos.
Nope,
Um,
nope. But you know what? Maybe I will. Maybe I'll have free
yeah,
time. Maybe I'll. Oops. Nope. Hope you wanted to see my Bed Bath and Beyond orders or my REI orders. I was just
I
trying to
love it.
save a page for later.
Yeah. Um, uh, is one of the There was this interview with the development team for Breath of the Wild, and the way that they prototyped that game was they basically took a bunch of like old, what is that? That's a
Oh,
parachute.
I killed my man with the mine. That's what I was trying to do. I killed my man.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and a
Maybe these
fresh one
are
was
maybe these
parachuting
are
in.
self-aware tanks because you don't need the guy. The guy that little guy is actually
Right.
a builder bot. It's a robot dog, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I think I just drowned my guy too because he is in the water. There we go. Slurped him up.
How do you know if
Yeah.
you have your guy or not? Is there an icon anywhere?
I see no piece of UI for that except that I can send him out.
Okay.
Oh, me at this Macintosh just lost his builder.
Okay.
The thing happening on the bottom of the screen here is actually
So the builder is not a pilot. I
yeah.
somehow, it's kind of funny. I totally invented a memory where the builder was your actual pilot and the pilot was super vulnerable. But
It would be very interesting if the pilot was doing this and by sending them out you like became a less mobile tank or lost more capabilities than just building stuff.
yeah, it would be sort of, Titanfall-esque, right? Because that was the sort of like gimmick with
Yep.
Titanfall is like you can leave your mech and just be like a more agile but weaker little dude running around, right?
Exactly.
Um, but so you go on YouTube and then watch
Mhm.
the interview with the sort of like how they prototyped Breath of the Wild, and they basically took assets from the original Legend of Zelda. So like the 8-bit kind of blocky graphics. But you see them experimenting with different things where when you have like the fire rod which shoots flames, you can light trees on fire, but then like other trees can light adjacent trees on fire. And so
Yep.
from there they were getting into that kind of like emergent behavior systems design where they wanted to be able to kind of create things that connected to each other. I think you could also light the raft on fire and then get off the raft and there's a current in the river, and so like the river would carry this burning thing,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
then
Breath of
light
the
other
Wild
things on
is
fire on the way
amazing for
there,
that.
right?
Well, and the fact that I like that they took a couple basic primitives, like there's fire and there's wind and there's ice,
Yes.
and like the fire creates wind, so you can go up, and you get better. You can like fly on your column of wind you generate by starting a fire that's like making hot air, right? Like
Yeah.
they took a couple of very specific elements and then turned them into an entire game of like interactions.
And then, of course, Breath of the Wild, I think, indulges in what is probably the most common thing for emergent style games, which is just like wild physics, right? Breath of the Wild had the kind of like the magnet thing. It also had the like the potential energy to kinetic energy, whatever that thing was,
I
when you like
loved
froze
that.
something
Yeah.
and then hit it.
Mhm.
That
Yeah,
worked in that game, but it all struck me as a little bit wonky, right?
it was exceptionally silly, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it was just one of those like, it's so cool to be able to. I don't know. It's like a physics concept that you know and understand, but then they taught you to use it differently, and
Right.
the way it worked differently was in fact super busted.
So I feel like we've kind of got like a reasonable idea of at least what are the basic building blocks here. Unfortunately, because we're not doing net play here, and because we also suck at the game, or at least you're doing fine. Like I was like colossally bad. I couldn't even destroy a pillbox. Like
I'm not sure. I'm no worse than you at this point.
yeah, um, I think we're probably not demonstrating like how all these things kind of come together. Hopefully, people take our word.
Yeah.
Old that this game was the shit at some point
Well, you
in
know
the
what?
past.
Anyone can go download this and install it. It's abandonware. It's old. It's easy to find.
Yeah.
I encourage
But
them to
like
do so.
it was pretty epic, right? I
Oh,
think
yeah.
you can kind of see how like having multiple people at the same time and having this idea that maybe the game isn't super visible, or like certain actions in the game are only visible to people on certain teams.
Mhm.
There's a lot of potential here, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would it be nice to start sketching out what we think this is as? Let me start sketching out, what we want to do for our game in terms of goals and stuff to
Yeah,
Either on
absolutely.
a iPad Sketch or in a notepad or something like that.
Yeah, that's totally great. Do you want to switch to your iPad? Do you want to kind of guide this out, or do you
Let's
want me to do
use
that?
yours. I'm afraid of reconnecting my iPad to the stream.
Okay.
That seems
Yes.
to be the nuclear thing at this moment seems to be plugging my iPad into the stream because boy, it made some weird noises.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't I share screen,
Yeah,
and then
switch it over.
we can just start sketching out some notes.
Sounds good.
Cool. I'll minimize some of these other windows here just so they're not too distracting. I sketched out a bunch of Bolo notes in our kind of Dropbox paper doc, but why don't we just go ahead and like retread them here?
Yeah.
And I realize that just by watching some of our older streams, I tend to scribble on parts of the notepad that are covered up by UI widgets. So if you let me know if I'm kind of getting in that territory, I can try to avoid that. We still have the cool programmer stream lower banner, right, with the party carrots?
It's on my other laptop. I can recreate it.
No,
No. Right now, you're full screen.
Oh, amazing. That's part of our secret sauce. I think that's actually what makes this stream. So
It's gonna come back. Yeah, I need to recreate. I need to do some OBS magic so I can move my cool programmer streams.
Yeah.
Is there
Okay.
a baby in your apartment?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Was there a baby in your apartment?
There's not a baby in my apartment, but I do live across the street from an elementary school
Oh, okay.
in Berkeley, and it's kind of empty. But what an elementary school is during a pandemic is a giant playground, right? That you kind of have to walk across a fence to get into. But like, yeah,
Precisely.
So we've got people playing outside. It's good. It reminds us that like, we can continue to thrive.
How nice to hear the sounds of human laughter at all hours of the day. That's delightful.
I don't know, man. Like I've been driving around a little bit the last couple of days just to run errands, and it feels like people are like out and about. So even if you're not like a crazy Orange County protester, I think people are getting kind of stir crazy.
Yeah, and I've been going out. Like I've got a good mask and glove system now, and I know what to wash afterwards. So like everything feels pretty okay.
Yeah. Okay, so what we need is like first of all a cool code name for the game that we're going to make right now. I don't think we should call it Bolo. It's an old game.
YOLO.
It's a popular game, but what'd you say?
YOLO.
It's called YOLO.
You only live once. No, just
YOLO. And it's kind of an RTS. Is that sort of what it is?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay. YOLO RTS. Okay, so what? We have tanks. That's a fair thing to start with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or robot dogs that are basically tanks. This is an important asterisk. I feel like it's important to kind of really call it out here on the whiteboard, right? I actually think that an important thing about Bolo itself is that the capabilities are fairly even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not a real there's no real upgrades. You get raw materials, but it's not like I can get a better gun for my tank.
Yes, that's
it's
right.
Like I can go find some wood and build a bunker, but that's it.
So I think this was actually an interesting thing that I'll basically mention next. Is there is like a harvest, or what do I want to call it? I want to call it like resource plus build mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And your superiority or your advantages come from terrain manipulation, right? That's almost kind of like by building things or laying mines or other things like that. That's kind of where you get any sort of advantage, other than just like being better at driving the tank and driving behind walls and being covered. Plus like tactics and just like skill with basic controls.
Yeah, and I think maybe the third major thing is like the terrain is interactive. Like the world is entirely destructible and malleable in some way.
Interactive plus
you can move
malleable.
rivers, you can build walls, you can build roads. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Build.
I wonder if in a newer 3D or version there would be hills, or if you built a wall, it's great, but like someone can shoot through it. So like, how much does that help?
Yeah. So there's like tons of mechanics that we can explore.
Hmm.
Um, maybe we can take inspiration from the Zelda thing that I was mentioning. This is I didn't have a plan for this, so like we can take it or leave it.
Hmm.
But like one way we might be able to approach this is just figure out like a motion mechanic that is simple and easy to do. Like you have the Bolo tank or robot dog or whatever that can. I'll stop talking about the robot dog. It's that the joke is running.
It's never about
Getting
yeah,
even
yeah.
for me. You have the tank. You can drive around. We might want to improve the controls a little bit so it's not so player hostile. But then we can kind of play with different ideas on like what we want these mechanics to be. We can start by maybe reproducing a few of the things that we observe in Bolo,
Mm-hmm.
or make a semi-faithful Bolo clone of like a sort of sub-slice of these things, like pillboxes or whatever. Seems like a fun thing to play with. But then start
Yeah.
playing with some other things, right?
Yeah, and I think as we decide and expand on the mechanic, my interest would definitely lie in like for every element we add, it has to almost have an interaction with every other thing. Like there needs to be like an exhaustive set of combinations, right? And
That's interesting. Yeah.
I think that might be why it works and why Breath of the Wild feels good too. Is that like a crater makes you move slower. A crater near a river like turns into more river. Um, yeah, and like I liked that things combined in unexpected ways, but in fact, like it really is just the matrix of like we combined everything, and like some things exist, some things we said like no, there's no interaction here, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But filling in the matrix, I think helps build surprise and delight, as well as creating some good emergent behavior.
See, this is actually, I think, the great thing about being able to kind of talk about the mechanics of game design together, because I didn't really focus on this aspect, even though I think tacitly sort of understood it. I just
Mm-hmm.
never put it to words. I always thought of it as just kind of like this, again, like drive a tank plus like basic RTS type things. But it is true that I think what gives it the sense of seamlessness is the fact that like the basic mechanics that are there all kind of like organically interact with each
Mm-hmm.
other, and they fit together. And maybe that's what I was getting at with the minimalism of the game too, because there's not a whole lot to keep in your mind, but it's actually surprisingly deep,
Mm-hmm.
right? You actually play it.
Well, and for all the twitchiness of it, you could really like be in the middle of a battle, accidentally mine a river, and then suddenly just gets stuck.
Yeah.
So it's got a very delightful failure mode where all your planning and the world sort of flips it on its head and gives you like the failure mode of your plan is the yeah that the world has conspired against you.
So that actually would be. There are games that like a lot of their charm is invested in this type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a big Minecraft thing too, where you like dig through a wall and lava pours out and you die.
Right. I'm trying to think of. I guess Smash Brothers has this as well,
Yeah.
where you kind of like accidentally interact with other things that are going on, and that's kind of like part of its charm. And um, I guess we can try to be sort of to have this as sort of like a goal in the back of our minds as we're designing things. It's like, can we create funny, chaotic moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
So yeah, so I think what you're getting at was were you saying we should maybe build a tank on an empty map and then add some elements like give
yeah,
it
yeah.
a
So
gun,
let me carve out a
give it a
little thing
wall.
over here. Is
Yeah.
the approach. Build simple 2D overhead sim.
Hmm.
Play with mechanics.
Yep. And I think that would give us some fun things for a couple of streams in a row too. For like basically picking a mechanic to add and figuring out how to integrate it into the rest of the system. I think it's also going to keep us honest about um, the code we write because we actually do need to have something where you can slot in a new object and have it like interact in terms of like, what happens to my neighbors, what's next to me, and what do I do with these interactions. So
Yeah,
we'll,
yeah.
we'll have to be fairly systematized in our approach to doing that stuff.
That's interesting because what I think what we're talking about here is basically a game that is like several orders of like 2 orders of magnitude more complicated than Breakout, what we just did, right? Because not only do we have like multiple mechanics to kind of play with, which is the first order of magnitude, the second order of magnitude is like dealing with the complexity of that in terms of the code, which the stream is kind of about, right? It's about programming and about organizing a complex piece of software as it is about as much as it is about like writing a game, because like that's a lot of like what any project, software or not, is just kind of like, how do we keep all this stuff in our head, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
And then way on the horizon, and this is like the last thing that we want to think about, maybe, or maybe it doesn't have to be the last thing. Mm-hmm. There are some games that are just purely kind of like wired around like the aesthetic, kind of make aesthetics of it. But we have discussed in the past, because we are kind of like somewhat nostalgia oriented, is like total 80s vaporwave, right? Like, and your callback to Tron earlier in the stream kind of reminds us of this, right?
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, I was wondering if Bolo, if a sort of digital inside the computer Bolo game would be an interesting one, and if they're aesthetics. If the aesthetics could inform like mechanics, or maybe the names of mechanics, like is there are you building with memory? Are you trying to get, what resource are you collecting? Are there drones that you're saying have to build something because it's a digital environment versus like having to set little mans, and do the drones need to come back, or do they just build it? So I think like we can maybe, the vibe will certainly inform how we think about what the mechanics are, maybe. Though I bet that most mechanics work in everything if you come up with a fancy word for it.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned aesthetics as being kind of the last thing, but it's so incredible how if you just like make one little animation, like a little sprite animation that looks rad, it could literally be the entire game, right? It was funny because like before I got into making games professionally, I always thought of like branded games like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game, or even like later sort of Mario games, as being something that somebody put together with the mechanic in mind first, and then just like kind of skinned it with the brand, or skinned it with the particular aesthetic that the publisher wanted at the time. But I'm not sure how true that actually is. I actually think a lot of games have the storyline and the visuals much earlier in the process than you think, and there's a much tighter interaction between the aesthetics of something and the actual storyline of something, and how the mechanics actually play out. I think there's probably a school of game analysis that wants to sort of strip the experience of a game, like that wants to sort of decouple the idea of mechanic and like what it is to play the game, and what is the competitive give and take of it from visuals, storyline, all those kinds of things. But I think the actual making of, like, you can't get one without the other. There's sort of this like yin yang synergy between the two, right?
Yeah.
Which may mean that like we may take an aside when we're talking about mechanics to just like talk about like what's the minimum viable cool aesthetic that we can get, right? Something like that. But like we can imagine how cool this is, right? A lot of this comes down to also wireframe, right?
Yep. Which like I initially thought, like, oh, it's easy. Like the models are already wireframes, but in fact, it's actually like a lot of work to make a good wireframe model that looks correct and feels right. It's a full model and style realized in itself, not like a cheap cop out for like we just draw the lines.
Yeah, and then maybe isometric is also kind of a cool thing. We can play with the projection, but isometric wireframe sounds pretty cool.
Now, does isometric, like, that actually is purely art style, right? Because like you're drawing, isometry is represented as a flat 2D map, and you just draw sprites that look like they're tilted 45 degrees.
So you can actually do a 3D render in an isometric projection. The idea there is there's just no foreshortening. So stuff that like is ostensibly further away from the camera still takes as much screen space as things that are closer to the camera. But it is actually exactly as you're saying. It is the kind of like it looks just like it looks like Warcraft looks like. You know, it looks like what SimCity looks like, where the camera is like floating over a particular building, but then as you go like miles away, you can still see other buildings that are just as big as the buildings that are right under the camera.
Yep.
But yeah, you can imagine just like there's just the super rad wireframe mountains in the background.
Yeah.
You know, and then like kind of like you've got your walls sort of extending off this way.
It's already perfect. This is the game.
Right. Should I be using green? Is that
You should, but this is okay. This is a maybe an Atari or a Commodore or something that rendered in orange on the screen.
yeah, yeah. And then you would have kind of like your I'm not a very good I'm actually a terrible artist, but you would kind of have your kind of wireframe tank driving along here, right? And then
Well, yeah,
potentially shooting
this is
stuff.
something I always wondered about isometric stuff, but I think when I think back to StarCraft and Warcraft, they do an incredible job of not letting you get behind something. There's no way to block your vision of an object, and it's not done through transparency. Um, Diablo does do transparency. They like unshade walls for you
Yeah.
as you see through the world, but like Warcraft and StarCraft didn't. They just crafted maps that actually didn't have the depth or the build. You couldn't build enough to block out like a marine because the marine was always set far enough back from the building and the building was always short enough. So there's like a really interesting, just a subtly great design there that they made it work really well with, such that they never had to think about isometric and like we block the player from seeing the thing.
Right. Right.
So like walls have to be like maybe short enough that you can see the character, but like and maybe they fog of war an enemy's vision or something. I can't quite figure out how that works. So
Yeah, that's actually, I think we'll probably get into that a lot as we're designing the graphics of this. But another way you can solve that with isometric projection is to allow the camera to rotate. So you can imagine that like maybe there's some limited camera control where you can pitch the camera up or pitch it down on like a fixed spline or something like that. So you can kind of peek over walls if you wanted to. This game, or at least Bolo, if we're taking our inspiration into like maybe not necessarily aesthetics, but like the core mechanics of it, it's not about hiding things from you intentionally. That's the point of a overhead view, is that you're not the perspective of the viewer.
right.
You can be omniscient if you want, right? And so maybe providing the camera that can facilitate that is fine. When things are obscured from you, it's because you're paying attention to other things, or because we intentionally added a specific mechanic to do that, like when you drive into trees in the original Bolo, right? Maybe there's a cloak or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, this game's gonna be sick. I'm already excited about it, even with my kind of like crappy drawing.
I know there's so much I want to build here, so I'm very excited about laying out this world and sort of figure out what the simulation looks like.
Okay, so gosh, this is gonna be really cool. So as we are talking about how we go about doing this, as always, we should let our hearts be our guide. But because there's two of us and we're working together, like sort of talking a little bit in advance about what we think we're going to do is good. And so I could easily see the stream. Like so far, we've kind of just done everything on stream. But like if I think if we want this to eventually be something that people can actually download and play, we're going to have to work on it for a little bit more than 4 hours a week. But not to get too far ahead of ourselves. Like we can sort of cross that bridge when we get to it. But maybe at the outset, our goal is to just, again, like we're sort of like coming up here with this approach kind of thing over here.
Well, what's our maybe coming up with what we want our stack to be first? Like do we want to stick with the canvas, things move around in the 2D field approach?
I think I'm happy with that as a kind of mechanics exploration.
Yeah.
The question is, like, how do we want to go about doing it? Because a lot's going to change if and when we move to this style scene, right? When we move to this style scene, we're going to figure out things that don't work and that do work. That may not translate.
If it's 3D, yes. If we do 2D isometric, like a StarCraft style,
yeah,
we could continue doing canvas. I think safely. We might make a mechanic that doesn't actually work as well isometrically, but otherwise,
yeah.
I think it's a direct translation at least.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be bad to have the kind of like 2D jank version as a scratch pad, anyways.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, even cooler is since it's maybe JavaScripty, if we could just take a game object from the scratch pad and pull it into the real version as a terrain type or object type that we can suddenly interact with.
yeah, absolutely. So
Not to over engineer things, but what if we over engineered it?
right. So I'd say we just like let's make the baby steps rather than the big leaps. So I'm actually super happy with the way that the current stack works for streaming.
Me
Right,
too.
the kind of
Yeah.
like split like 600 pixel playfield on the left side, code on the right side, kind of thing
Hmm.
has actually worked really well. Although we may want to expand our pixel depth a little bit
Yep.
to at least be 640 by 480 or something like that to at least match Bolo.
Get the true
Um,
Bolo experience. Well, so maybe the I'm trying to think of like the homework we could do between the streams, and maybe it's like set up a fresh playfield, make a player object that's moved with arrow keys, and like start on Wednesday with that, and then see how we feel about tile-based stuff and adding objects in. So like,
I think
maybe
we
we
should
don't.
try to do that now. Actually, do you want to just break ground? We could just
Let's
get
do
into
it.
it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
I think we'll be well prepared. And
Okay.
we know what we're doing there. Is this gonna be the game two?
I would maybe we can call. This is why I was trying to look for a name. We could call it like
Ah. Oh yeah,
Yolo
YOLO.
RTS.
YOLO RTS.
Okay. There's got to be a name of for because RTS implies something which I think we're trying to.
Hmm.
There was a game that I played which was RTS, but you played this mage, and it was sort of like over the shoulder camera, and you led like a squad of monsters and you summoned them, and it was like, gosh,
Cool.
what's the name of that game? It was all the rage at some point. Um, it'll come back to me. It was like considered to be one of the, like the great underrated RTSs, and it was sort of early, I want to say very early 2000s when it came out.
Huh.
But it had this idea that you were actually a character. You, as the sort of actor that is causing things to happen in the game, was an actor in the game itself and walking around the playfield, and
That's really cool.
probably also directly casting spells. So I guess RTS is appropriate because like we're more in like that than just being like the god that can manipulate different objects on opposite corners of the map, right?
Was this called
That's sort of the idea.
Sacrifice?
Sacrifice. Yes. Oh my gosh. How did you figure that out?
I remember playing this. I beta tested this, the Mac version too. This was very fun. I remember that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And Sacrifice had this interesting mechanic, like where you would click open a menu and it would have these like different options,
Mhm.
right?
Oh yeah, and
And then
you build like you could build some buildings, and they would like generate monsters for you or something.
yes. And then when you like
Ah.
right click, it would spawn an interface that looked like this. And then when you like gestured the mouse to the right, it would expand this menu into something else, like and so like a lot of the spell casting was almost like gesture based. They actually tried to make it almost like Street Fighter style where you're kind of memorizing uh a little
That's
mouse
cool.
motion to like get to the spells that you wanted. Because it was like it had a really
Yeah.
massive book of spells, right?
Mhm.
Wow, we're really kind of mining the depths of our memory here of like old games.
What if old games were great
Yeah.
and people should have kept making some of those? Yeah, wow, you can still buy this. I might install this on my Windows machine.
Yeah, is that Good Old
I
Games you're
forgot.
looking at right now?
I found it on Steam and Good Old Games. I forgot
Wow.
all about this shit.
Okay.
Oh,
Uh,
and there's a Mac version that I bet I can run in Sheepsaver.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, that game was an RTS to me, so I think we're still kind of in RTS territory.
okay. Should we just get into it? Let's just get it. We have 45 minutes ish. We started late too. We'll get people out in early no matter what, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Maybe we can get a tank driving around right now. What do you think about that?
I think that I just get a new directory.
Okay, let's do it. I'll swing it back to you. I actually think that for the stream, it's a lot better for the refresh rate if you're the one typing, just because like we can actually see what's going on. And
Oh.
until we, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm frustrated that that your laptop is or something is making that worse on your end? Because I like when you
We'll
can
we'll
drive too.
solve it. I'm
Yeah,
gonna maybe research the independent streaming box thing and see how far we can take that.
that'd be cool.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. So go. Feel free to take over screen share.
Okay. I am sharing. Are you? Do you see my terminal?
I do. I definitely do.
Great. All right. Let's take this into code. Come on. I taught you about code. Boo. Something in my brand new shell isn't remembering what I've shown it. That's okay.
Yeah.
Instead, we'll just take Yolo RTS all the way down here.
Nice.
Okay, so let's see. New index. And in fact, I'm going to open the old game.
We'll just copy
because,
everything.
Yeah, a lot of the parcel stuff is going to be exactly the same. So let's see. I think that index.html should be the same. Yep.
Yeah, I think pretty much everything at the top level is going to be identical, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then source is just going to be the different thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's another game. Yeah, I feel good about these installed packages because it's really nothing.
And you can kind of command D the word the game in this file and just replace it with Yolo RTS.
Yep.
I don't know why package.json just insists on having all these extra fields. It's like the license is a critically important thing for you to figure out like on day one.
You know how you get rid of it? Is just do that.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it's just that there's a little too much bullshit that like it thinks that we want to make a package. It's really determined that we set up a brand new. I don't know.
They're just super into open source, is what.
Yeah, they're just like you're doing open source, right? That's the only thing you could ever want to do with this. Wow, I can option drag between windows. That's really delightful.
Wow.
All right, get more. My yarn.block is there. Cool. Oh, and then we must need a main.ts. And nothing really happened in main.ts. We've got some canvas stuff. I think that was maybe it.
Yeah. I think we would start with like the clear canvas and then maybe the game loop, and that's it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. I think that is correct. And
yeah, we probably don't even need the first one anymore. The line 10 to 12 is maybe not even necessary.
You know, that's just been hanging out for a while.
Yeah.
And then all of it. And great, I think that's the whole thing. So let us yarn start. So far so good. Safari window going over here, and then localhost 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey.
Wow, we are cooking with gas.
Love it. That was easy.
Yeah.
So, surely that was the whole, as usual, we're done in record time. It's Bolo. If everything you want is black, you just can't see the complex interactions that we're placing on the screen here.
Yeah. So maybe our tank starts off as a square. What do you think?
I want something that I can see turn. A triangle?
Oh, that's a great point. Yes, and not only a triangle, but like, what is it when it's two sides of the same length? Isosceles? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it should
so
be
you
like
know which is the front.
Right. Yeah, the bottom is the length of the square, and the other two sides are whatever it takes to, like, it can still be a square, but whatever triangle contained within the square fits like that.
And then maybe another notion. Maybe I hope this is not too early to introduce this idea, but maybe we can think of the playfield as being a grid of tiles.
Yep.
And that the player is one tile in size, right?
Yes. totally agree. So let's maybe just like, oops, no, let's maybe interface. Maybe just start writing out some types and see how we do. So
Okay.
playfield has a um, interface tile. Whoops. And this gets a tile array.
Yep.
Wow. Four spaces. Really, that's what you want. And this
Do you have a prettier plugin for VS Code that'll save on the format on save?
I do, and it. Oh, there we go. It's
Oh,
getting four spaces, and it's still just doing it. So
yeah.
VS Code wants to type four spaces, but prettier, thankfully, will fix us. So a tile, yeah.
These are logical constructs that you're making right here. This is not about rendering yet. This is just like what type of terrain it is, or something like. Is that what you're getting at for this?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe the tile would know what it contained basically.
Yep.
Yeah. Terrain, mountain, river, grass.
Yeah.
Something. I feel like that's a nice place to start.
Yeah.
We'll probably have a tile size, and let's say tiles are square.
Yep.
So maybe like 40 pixel tiles. What is 640 divided by 40? So that's 16 tiles on a 640.
Oh, right.
16 by 12.
What if a 16 by 16 pixel tile is that?
So that's 40 tiles. That sounds right.
Okay.
That's 40 by 30 on a 640 by 40 thing. So let's start there because it's a nice.
Okay.
Something about that it just feels vintage.
Yeah. 640 by 4. What was VG? VGA is like 320 by 200, right? That was the sort of original.
I thought VGA was 640 by 480. VGA resolution. I use this graphic all the time, so
that's awesome.
There you go. I like that they just have
man.
this, and then Macintosh is just like, we don't know, we made one up.
It was probably something like derived from publishing, right?
Oh,
like how many picas is that?
Yeah, I enjoyed this one too, where they're just like, we're like HD, and then a lot more HDs. We're just like, I don't know, QHD, UHD, we couldn't decide.
Yeah. And then if we have defined in constants what we want our tile size is, maybe we can define the playfield size in terms of like number of tiles. So like we could say playfield tile width, playfield tile height, and then we can derive the pixel size of the canvas from that.
Cool. That sounds good. Yeah.
40?
1640, yeah. So it's 40 by 30. Weirdly, it's a 4:3 ratio. Which is definitely what all that stuff was. Cool.
Do you dig 4:3 as a photographer?
I mean, it's fine. I really like when you use an iPad as a camera, like an old person. But in fact, they're smarter than the rest of us because it looks like you're shooting on like an 8x10, viewfinder camera. It's almost exactly like the ground glass on the back. And then you usually get a picture that's just about the same size out the other side. So I'm a big fan of like 4x3 big viewfinders.
But if you wanted it to be like Fibonacci, like golden ratio, it'd be like 3 to 5 is probably the more.
Yeah, 3 to 5 is like a normal like Nikon film camera that they made for 40 years.
Yeah.
And 4 to 5 is actually what I really like to shoot.
Interesting.
Which 4 by 5 and 8x10 is all the same ratio, but that's like the medium format of film, medium and large format.
Yeah.
And those I think are just exceptional. They look great.
And basically, Instagram is all squares. Is that the world we live in right now? So everything is a
No,
square.
you can do non-square on Instagram now. They gave up on that.
Oh, interesting.
I know. And video, like Instagram, who knows, man?
Yeah.
Like,
Are we importing or exporting?
we are. You know what? I'm in the import-export business.
Who can remember these days?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Uh,
First you get the import, then you get the export, then you get the women.
yes. And with, I love that you get, man, VS Code is actually a really nice editor.
TypeScript might be the future, right? Like,
It
it's
is.
probably
I mean,
the thing to start every project in from now on. I don't know. Like, if you're trying to go fast.
what I like that for Unity, you actually can just write a bunch of JavaScript too now. Like,
Hmm.
they're super happy to make that the language that replaces C Sharp, and I think it will.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think I'm going to init a playfield.ts.
Okay.
Export class playfield. And then, God, what is constructor? So let's see. We want maybe some of the stuff isn't actually quite in common, but I don't want to pigeonhole ourselves in yet.
Okay.
Terrain tile. Have you ever used this convention?
So I did C++ for a good 5 or 6 years of my original career, and so the whole like prefix notation, Hungarian, Polish, whatever it is like part and parcel of like the way that I think about like C++ code. So like all my pointers have a letter P sitting in front of it,
Right.
and all my
Okay.
member variables have a letter M.
My guess actually is that this interface is not what we want, and what we want is for this class to be strongly typed and have a strong signature itself.
Yeah, yeah. We're probably going to want to add methods to that structure, so having a class is nice.
Yep.
Now, I'm not opposed to having all the data public up front if we felt like that was
No,
useful.
absolutely. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I only make private stuff when I don't want someone else to mess up my code, like the next developer.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about us.
Yeah, it can. Like, it's so funny. I think the sort of invention of public and private. I mean, it probably goes back really far. I bet Smalltalk had it, right? Like, but that was like before people wrote unit tests, right? And I guess maybe it's a bad unit test if you're asserting on private state, but like for debugging purposes and for testing purposes, it can often be useful to like write code that can peek into like the class. And so I don't know. I'm okay with everything public for now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So let's see. So I'm trying to get used to a little more of that. Oh, it's so delightful. So delightful.
What just happened?
I just let VS Code do my for loop for me
Oh,
because I'm
got
just lazy.
Yeah.
So let's see. We're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do for J.
And traditionally, we do the I is your rows, so you would do the height in the outer loop and then the width in the inner loop.
Fair. And let's see. So here we're going to do tiles I equals. We're going to do, let's see. Const row equals tiles I equals row.
By the way, you're doing such a better job of this than I would be. You would see me kind of like you'd see me kind of like get really flustered with all this stuff. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying my best. Let's see. Should it be like self.tiles? Is that what it's saying?
This tiles.
Inside a constructor? I guess so.
I think so. Self was a CoffeeScript thing, right?
Oh, you're totally right. Yeah, it's not even in JavaScript anymore.
Yeah.
Great. Row J equals. Let's see. I want this to be. Oh, this just needs. If I put anything in here, it's like that should be a TypeScript error. I want this to be a TypeScript error.
Do we need to type annotate row, or is that? It should know, right?
It should. It's not angry about this. I'm
We
really
could annotate
surprised.
row, just to call it like an array of tiles, if just to be laborious about it. Um, Now it should complain. Yeah.
Boy, that's too bad. I thought that would have inferred itself, but that's okay.
Yeah. All this
Oh,
kind of like, Hindley Milner type inference stuff that we kind of are diving our toes into right now is so magical to me. And it kind of makes me wonder if it's just like a version of the halting problem where at a certain point it's just gonna like quit trying to infer types. I think that's what we just saw right there. Right?
and I understand why. I find that when the compiler stops checking is when I've probably like I'm just like okay like fine you called my bluff like I'll write some more code.
Yeah.
Canvas.
Nice.
I'll just put that there because I know we want it.
We'll want it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it feels pretty good.
Okay.
And then so in our oh yeah, sorry, what were you gonna say?
No. Please keep trucking.
Great. I was gonna take us back to this and grab our playfield from playfield.
Mhm.
I took this out of common, right? Yeah, nobody did that. Cost playfield equals playfield, and then I think under playfield, I think this is the next step, which is with context.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And I guess, yeah, I'm kind of inclined to draw these tiles now. I guess.
Let's do it. Yeah.
We do need to do something like that. Okay.
I think your loop is going to look a lot like the one you have in the constructor, but instead we're gonna inside of that we're gonna switch off of the type and maybe just draw squares of certain colors. Does that feel like a good way to start with that?
I think that feels like a great way to start with that.
And eventually there'll be legit tile textures, right, or some kind of
yeah. But let's just stick with
yeah.
colors and
Yeah. I love keeping things like base geometry for a long time, as long as it's like kind of gets the message across.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be switch of tiles ij dot type, right? Something like that.
And is
this dot tiles? Sorry.
Thank you. No.
If this was Java, you would know. Does Swift know?
No, you know what it is? I've gotten into a habit. Swift might. I've gotten into a habit of destructuring all my variables at the top of the function that are coming from like props in React. I'm just like,
oh yeah, yeah.
Totally. What do you mean it's not part of the local namespace? And it's that I didn't do the work.
A lot of the newfangled languages force you to declare this in the function signature. So Go does that, right, and Rust does that. I think Python actually was probably like one of the first modern languages to kind of make you do that. And I actually really like that. I really like declaring all of the variables.
Yeah, it's really helpful, and you start to see that you see when you've introduced too much complexity too early, in my opinion.
Yeah. Cool. And maybe we're just assigning colors in this, right, in this table here.
I think that's correct. And sorry, so we're going to do context dot fill rect.
And then we'll set a y between line 23 and line 24. Maybe we can do like a const y equals I times the tile size, right?
Yep. I times tile size. And this is so the x is j times tile size, y. You know what? I'm just going to make this is an unnecessary line, but I'm going to make myself feel good.
Yeah. No, it's got a nice symmetry with the thing above.
I like that this will be legible, yes. And then this is TTX.
Fill style, yes. Let's just make it green for now. It's equals. I think. Yeah, I think it's fill style.
Yeah.
It's a property.
Cool. Oh, and it probably takes a string.
Yeah. I think we could just do green or whatever,
green.
right?
I want like a. Yeah, I want that.
Ah, gosh, you're fancy.
I just get really sometimes like a thing that really makes a project work for me is when there's just enough.
Yeah.
Hey.
Oh my God, look at that.
Whoops, that worked.
It worked really well. I'm impressed.
And you know what? This case statement is redundant.
Yeah.
Let's do is that.
I mean, if you wanted to like really golf this down, we could make a table or like we can at least make a little like object lookup where the keys, like, because what is our enum ultimately? Does the enum become a number in TypeScript?
Oh, right. We could actually.
Or are they strings?
You can set values. I think it can be anything really.
By default, do you know what they are?
By default, I think it starts at 0 and increments a number.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah,
this is fine.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, but I don't.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, what if we actually made a map?
Yeah, that's fine.
That has a mountain and a river on it.
Yeah, one thing just to make sure that your code works, you could do is you could say like in line 18, you could say if I mod if like j mod 0 is 0, do grass. If j mod 0, if j mod 3 is 0, it's grass. If j mod 3 is 1, it's river. If j mod 3 is 2, it's mountain. Something like that, right?
And really, like, we can just do
Oh yeah, just one.
Just to see stuff showing up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally is.
Yeah.
Which is good. I also want to. It's less necessary here, but I'd like to stroke correct.
Oh, you want a little grid?
I want a little grid.
And we can make that like typically like a lot of these sort of debugging lines. If we think that it's going to be like debugging oriented, a lot of times people use like C, M, Y, or K. You're using K right now, which is great. But like they'll use like bright magenta or bright cyan, and that is always to the game developer like a lot of like debug wireframes. If you just want to like render a scene in 3D, but you want to see the collision volumes and stuff, a lot of those volumes, that geometry will be rendered in like magenta because like that tends to like just pop straight out.
I've seen that. Yeah. Oh, there should be strokes. Yeah, looks kind of blurry to be honest.
The stroke makes it blurry, or is it just because the alpha? Oh, got it. Yeah.
It's the alpha, and I think it's that. In fact, it's rendering. I think it's two strokes that are overlapping each other, which is interesting.
Okay.
Because every rect is stroking.
That is interesting. Yeah, because
canvas 2D stroke rect.
Yeah.
Style. I feel like there might be a way. Like I wanted to draw either the inside edge.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to like not anti-alias either. Like, is it possible to just like make it a single pixel?
That could be nice, but I'm kind of fine with this. I really just want to see the code.
It's fine.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so that's a good start.
Do we want a little bit of variety? I mean, like, I think maybe this is fine. Like, we could do one of two things right now. If we're really into playfields, we could have a quick way of map editing, or we could make the tank drive around.
Let's make the tank drive around, and then I think I can think of like maybe a simple text map file that we actually load here and read in. That's easily editable for ourselves.
Yeah, I was definitely going to say like multi-line string with backticks. That's how you do it in JavaScript, and then just like one character that looks like a mountain, one character that looks like grass, and one character that looks like.
That'd be cool. Yeah. I was thinking we could load it. We could load it externally too, and maybe let Parcel deal with it, and/or teach Parcel what our map files are.
That's interesting too.
Such that if we give it an extension, it actually loads it in as like a single string that we can read like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that sounds like a fun next time. So playfield looks good. Let's make a tank. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, I really do love how fast this is going. Now that I feel like we got a game loop, we got
Mhm.
a play field, we sort of know what's happening after pawn.
And can I actually recommend a slightly different name for this class, which is
Yeah,
player?
player.
And that
Yeah,
will matter
I saw that coming.
maybe
Yeah, you're
much
right.
later.
No, that's totally yeah. Well, and also I definitely uh, from some research I've done, my immediate reaction was like, I should make a mover class, and then make a player class that has a mover that like accepts input and like affects the mover. But like, you know what? Later.
Yeah. I have about 2.5 hours of thoughts that I could say about that particular subject, and then after that point, it generates the ramblings of a madman. It wasn't that already, but the idea here is that we might want tanks that aren't also controllable by
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I was thinking mover, tank, player. Other things
Yes.
might be movers. The whole thing is. I remember doing this in Unity once and just being like, oh god, there's a lot of shared behavior, and it's good.
Right.
I
I
think
think Unity actually teaches a good lesson, which is that they don't use inheritance to build these objects, right? They compose a bunch of things. So you basically add. It gets actually pretty abstract, right? Like a lot of the stuff that I've done, you have a transform, and that represents a world space position, and so that's like a rotation, an XYZ position, that sort of thing, and that's like logically what your orientation position is in the world, and then you will have a logic component that itself could be AI driven or input driven or something like that. And then you'll also have like a character component, which is the thing that reads from the transform to render its position. And those are just like collections of things. Yeah. Anyways, I don't want to start on the 2.5 hours of rambling.
no,
right
no,
now,
we're not.
but
We're
it's
not.
a fun
We're not gonna
subject.
do it. Yeah.
I get off on that kind of stuff.
No, I think it's. I think it's really fun, and we're gonna. I'm excited to do this thing that actually feels like it has a lot of system stuff in it because we get to build that.
Slight typo on the word position. It's actually how I spell it every single time I type it as well.
Position.
Yeah.
I love that. The nice thing is with these imports, it will actually. I can at least find replace the whole thing if I needed to.
Yeah.
It's a position. So I'm giving the player a current position that it knows about. I'm thinking the player probably holds the keyboard handler for moving itself.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can imagine a system where we do something a little different, but
Yeah.
for now we'll do x0, y0. So we'll just start in the top left,
Mhm.
and then our render is we're gonna have to do some ctx.fill. We might have to do a path actually. So I think this is to draw a triangle. We actually have to start doing real drawing, not just rectangles.
Okay.
So let's see, canvas, 2D, draw path.
And we did a little bit of this before when we did the arcs, right? The arc is sort of like a helper to define a path.
Yeah, the arc has a very specific. It's like, did you want to draw a circle, which is nice.
Right.
But for this, I think here it is. It's begin path, close path, and I think you move within the path. I've seen this. Yeah. So this is line 2. So we're gonna get our starting position and our what else this needs is an orientation.
And that'll be some amount of radians. Like, and I guess we'll treat it orientation. We just have to pick arbitrarily what 0 means, right? It's like facing north, maybe. What do you think?
Yeah.
Or facing south.
I think 0 should
or facing right,
pointing up.
Pointing
I think 0 points up. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll call this a number. We can define a type.
It's a number.
Later.
Yeah.
Yeah. A type might be, I don't know, or they'll put some limits on it using the type.
I mean, it can be helpful if you want to make sure that you're not adding distances to angles. Like that's exactly. Kind of the idea. But I've also very rarely seen programs that got that specific about it as well.
Okay, so let's see. So we're going to do begin path and then ctx.fill. And this is ctx.line to xy. I just wanted to get that in here so I could get this up on screen.
And we really only need, if I remember correctly, you need 2 line 2s, and then the thing will figure out how to close it, right? Is that correct?
I believe that is correct. I think if I set fill style equals black, surprise.
1 more 0, maybe?
No, we're not rendering it.
Oh. Nice.
Did you check out how this actually just imported that automatically for me?
Yeah, it's really sweet.
Okay, now I think it should have rendered, so explain that TypeScript.
What console is this? Is this new? Oh, this is Safari. Okay.
Well, welcome to the good browser. I just love Safari.
Nice.
I'm a big Safari fan. Okay, so let's see. Fill style. Did I miss anything? No.
What if we straight up copied what they typed right there? Just like
Great idea. I wonder if I need to move to. Yeah, let's. I see nothing wrong with that. Except I need to fill twice. There we go.
Our alpha is.
Is it actually that I need 1 more 0? You were correct about that.
That is a strange bug, right?
It's because I believe that this is actually. You know how there's the 3-letter CSS shortcuts? I think this is the 4-letter CSS shortcut for RGBA.
Oh, go figure.
It is dumb. So is it rendering? No, not really. And if I moved, do I need to move to first? That's the
I
one
think that
thing
was the
that
thing,
is.
yeah. And then your second line 2 is gotta go to a different point, I think.
Yeah, 100, no, 100, 0 maybe. Hey, that's
oh,
triangle.
That's cool. Yeah. This is awesome.
It's happening. I like it.
How big do we want the character to be? The character should be within one tile. Is that?
It should be. Yeah. It should be a tile. Yeah.
Yeah. But we also want to imply an orientation as well. So and this is where it gets interesting because you can rotate the player.
Mm-hmm.
We may be getting to a point where it's useful to think of like the geometric center of the rendered thing is also the control point as well logically, right? Which we'd kind of been avoiding. Like in Breakout, everything was like the upper left corner, right? So the upper left corner of the ball was this control point, upper left corner of the paddle was this control point, same thing for the bricks.
I think that makes sense, and it also might be the way we want to handle interaction with a tile, where like that's our collision detection essentially. Like since you can move pixel by pixel in Bolo at least, even though it also is clearly like chunks of tile. Maybe what we're saying is, you know, when that center point crosses into any tile is our interaction taking place, like a mine or a slow down or a speed up or something.
Yeah, or that we'll probably want a volume that is the collision, and it could be the same thing as the shape of the tank. But if we wanted to make it simpler, it may be like a narrow rectangle or something like that, because rectangles are easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say eventually what we're going to have is, I think for our 2D simulation, we're going to save a lot of heartache if our tanks are roughly squares.
Yeah. And
that maybe the squares don't rotate with the orientation for the purpose of collision. I might regret that, but it's just so much easier to do collision detection if all of your boxes are axis aligned, right?
Right.
But I don't know. That's also a fun exercise to do, like rotated box overlapping. That's just a little bit of geometry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is cool.
Well, I'm just getting the math in there. So our center point needs to be anywhere on the grid.
Mm-hmm.
So in fact, what we have that I can take out of here is const center.
Is the position of the player its tile position, or is it its pixel position?
Oof. That's
I
a
think
good
it should.
question.
I think it should be the latter. Actually, I think it should be the world
Pixel
position.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay. No
because
multiplication, then.
our motion, if we preserve what Bolo looks like, where there's a little bit of like slidiness, the position is often going to be like it's always going to be some kind of like floating point number, right? It's gonna like you're gonna be on position like 3.xyz, right?
That's totally true.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I want. So this dot position plus tile size. This dot position minus tile size. Oops, over 2, which is our 0 point.
Yeah, and these are the positions need like dot x's and dot y's on those lines. I think.
Boom, that's correct. I was like, why is it angry? Because you can't subtract from a thing. I'm close.
I'm gonna try to think here. I'm gonna sort of sketch this out on my iPad just to sort of think about how we want to think about this.
Mm-hmm. What math is wrong?
So I'm actually thinking, and the orientation is going to affect this a lot. And we might not have time to do a full orientation of this, but do you mind if I share screen really quickly?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, the orientation I'm gonna need to like research the math for. I need to figure out what transform of this triangle is actually getting rendered.
Right. Am I showing up for you?
You are.
Okay. Okay, so we have the position, the control point of the tank, and let's say it's like in the middle of a tile. I think the default thing we're going to want is something like this.
Yep.
Which means that if we don't do any rotation, the move to is going to be the XY position of the control point. Let me just call that P for player.
Yeah.
P minus, and this is what I'm going to do for vectors, 0, and then the tile size divided by 2, and that'll get you here, right?
Yep.
So that's A. And then you want to draw a line to here, right? And then you want to draw a line to here. That's B. That is C. And then B is going to be the point plus maybe 1/3 of a tile, like or maybe one quarter of a tile, because like we want it to be narrower along, like whatever this is going to be narrower than a full tile, right?
Yeah. And
maybe
so
1/4 is a good starting point, right? Is that
so
reasonable?
it's like a half tile wide tank essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, and then half of the tile size. I mean, I'm using the different letters for everything.
That's okay. I kind of gotcha.
Capital T. And then C is going to be the point plus
negative 1/4.
negative 1/4 T.
Yeah.
Still 1/2 T.
Yeah, and if you convert the top one to a plus, I think it makes sense. Like this is plus negative.
Plus and then minus. Yes.
Yeah.
And then that should do it, right? And then if we wanted to do orientation, what we'd be doing is we'd be applying the rotation matrix. I use this
Yeah.
style of rotation. Like this is how I do matrices. Like I think the standard way of doing matrices is bars, right? People will do matrices like
Yeah.
this: A, B, C, D. I actually developed a shorthand where I do this.
Oh, cute. Yeah.
Just less writing and it's a little bit clearer.
Mhm.
Maybe that's going to screw everybody up on stream, so I should maybe not be too cute about it. But there's like a rotation matrix. If I remember correctly, you just memorize this. I think it's like cosine theta 1 or like sine theta 1. It's like some, and there might be a negative in here somewhere. It's like something that you apply to the x and y position. And the x and y here are going to be your path points, right?
Right. Oh, that's rad. Okay. Well, let me get these path points in then, and then maybe since we're kind of coming up on 5, we just start next week with like we're gonna rotate this triangle. Here's the
Yeah,
plan.
or we can even move this guy around without doing orientation. Like there's like I think both of those are perfectly fine. But like we have an idea of like what we want here, and that's this bit right here, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
I'm gonna pull that. I'm gonna keep your screen on the screen because everyone can still see it actually.
Okay.
Even though I'm sorry you will lose the screen share for a second, but let me just pop this in here.
No, it's cool.
Or really, I'll just capture 0.
And I can fix some of my penmanship here. I'll clean this up a little bit.
Negative 100. Okay. Nope, I gotcha.
Okay.
Back to me.
Yep. Perfect.
Alrighty. So that was really helpful. So we move to the center. We draw a line to x and then y minus 1 size times 5. Oh wait, sorry. Our center point, actually, this needs to be something that we capture, right?
It is just this dot position x, and
oh,
then
it is. Sorry, we're moving.
Yeah.
That's right, because you are into.
And then subtract tile size minus divided by 2. No, you had it right actually. Well, the move to is the first point, right, that we're drawing. So I think it's just line 14, right? Line 14 describes the initial move to.
Great. Yeah. I see. Oh, because we move to, then we draw a line. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so that's actually I did that. And then line 2. 1 tile size times 0.25, and this dot position y plus tile size 0.5.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I just got some copy paste in here. Plus tile size. So that's our triangle, and that's a syntax error, and that looks great. So if I put this at like 64, something that is plus 8, so that'd be 72 should stick it in a tile completely. Yeah. Great.
That is awesome.
Looks good. And yeah, it feels a little narrow, but I like that in fact that this 0.25 can be sort of like.
Here's a suggestion. Can we go to common.ts?
Yeah.
Can we say that playfield, export const playfield pixel height in common.ts? Export const playfield pixel height, and we'll keep playfield tile width and tile height. You'll get what I'm getting at here.
Okay.
Export const playfield. You know what? Let's not do it this way. I'm trying to be too algebraic about it. Sorry. What I was going to say is like let's double the tile size and have the tile height and tile width, so we can just have bigger things. Does that? Or that'll solve your narrowness thing. So if we went to like tile size 32 and the tile width was 20 and 15, I don't know. Maybe that will make for a shitty map.
I'm kind of really enjoying the density of this grid right now. I
just changed that's fine.
I changed the constant to 0.3, and I thought the little ship looked a lot better immediately.
I'm into it. Okay.
Yeah, I like that we've just got this nice little hard-coded algorithm, and we'll, pick a better version of this someday. 128. So I like that we've got this half tile representation too, basically. Okay. Well, I think that might be our player and our board for today. Uh,
Awesome.
it's a great start, and I'm excited to start making it interact with itself next week. So,
Yeah. So next week, which would be Wednesday, we're talking about getting this guy to move around, getting this guy to rotate, um, and maybe also doing some map editing, right? And if we're
mhm.
really really good, we can smash those things together and have some interaction between the type of terrain that you're over and either the velocity or the collision of that. So we weren't able to escape physics altogether, right? We thought we were going to be done with physics, but
No,
there's
no,
going to
I
be a
think
little bit of it.
physics keeps coming, and I think one thing that I'm going to find very interesting too is that bullets. Our tank's going to shoot bullets, right? It's a tank
Yes.
game. We, c-
Yep.
I mean, we could, be more. I feel like you can make very interesting games that don't involve shooting and blowing things up these days, but like, I kind of want to make a tank game. So,
Yeah, I want to shoot
uh,
things.
and blow them up.
It's, bullets are fun. Yeah.
Great, and bullets are fun, and bullets are very interesting because I think it'll be a very fun physics exercise to be like, our tank was at this angle, the bullet was shot with this impulse, it has to track in a straight line until it hits something. So like, it's a lot of very interesting little colliders that we shoot off of the tank that I'm excited to
Yeah,
program.
yeah. We're gonna do like line to box collisions, right?
Hmm.
Which is gonna be cool.
Yeah, I think I might have lost your video on the stream, which is a bummer.
Um, you know what it is.
I still see your video. I think Tuple just renamed its windows.
Oh, weird. That's cool. I think one of the things with our streaming setup right now is that like my video from Tuple is very laggy. So I think half the time people are seeing my frozen face, anyways, which
They
is cool.
are. It's unfortunate. We're gonna improve this, but it's been so fun. We're doing
Okay,
so good.
we're
Cool.
doing great. Okay, so we've got a plan. We've got an agenda for next time. We got an idea for a game that is got a lot of depth to it, and it's also stuff that's like easy to model in the brain. So that's exciting,
Hmm.
right? We're not going to be hopefully too stuck on anything.
And look how
And
much more
then
game like our game started out as this time.
yeah,
We learned a lot.
yeah, and then I think the meta stream thing will be we can figure out ways of improving the latency so that if it comes to me sharing screen, it might be possible for us to do it in a way that will appear somewhat smooth.
Fingers crossed. I think we
Cool.
can do it.
All right.
All right. Thanks a lot, dude. This is great as usual. Have a happy rest of your Sunday.
Yeah, same to you and everyone else. Happy Sunday and stay safe.
All right. Stream. Stop.